Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's public safety briefing led by Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Phil Banks. To the members of the media who are joining, we ask that you please change your name to include your outlet if you wish to be called on during Q&A. During today's briefing, after each speaker, we will take a few questions from the media related to their announcement. Following our last speaker, we will take several questions that have been submitted by the public ahead of today's briefing. I would now like to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Phil Banks.
Thank you, Derek. So good afternoon, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this briefing on the state of public safety. Last week, we were joined by representatives of every agency included in what we like to call the public safety ecosystem, because keeping the public safe is a team effort. Today, we're going to hear from three of those agencies, the NYPD, the DEP, and the Department of Sanitation. The NYPD is going to talk about crime statistics for the month of February, which is down 5.6%. And though we don't like to stress numbers, we're happy that we're going in the right direction. But often we say is that one victim is too many, and you're going to hear about our efforts to minimize that and get better every single month. You're also going to hear a overview from the DEP. They're going to talk about exactly what they do, how their operations work, and they're going to also specifically talk about noise pollution and what they're doing about it. And last, we're going to hear from the Department of Sanitation, and they're going to be talking about all of their efforts to keep our city streets. You may have heard Mayor Adams say this, and he said it many, many times. It's our job people need to be safe, but more importantly, or I would say as important, they need to feel safe. The overwhelming majority of New Yorkers will never, ever be a victim of a crime. It just won't happen. But if you're going out throughout your course every day and you don't feel safe, well, that's almost just like being a victim of a crime. So our job in public safety is to make you safe, but as important for you to feel safe. So the topics we're discussing today are those issues that sometimes make us feel less safe. For an example, if you get woken up night after night because of loud vehicles on your street, or throughout your course of the day, you just see trash overpiling and people just dumping trash into empty lots or on the streets, it just gives a sense of lawlessness. That's not acceptable in our book, and more importantly, they are correctable. Now, of course, we will always continue to combat crime and making sure that we reduce crime, but we will also concentrate on those areas that contribute to an unsafe environment. We know that some of those issues are, because you've told us. You told us through 311 calls, you told us through your reps on the city council, and you told us at community meetings. We know that these are a priority for many residents, so we're here today to tell you that we hear you, and these are our efforts to solve some of those issues. On that note, I cannot stress enough how important it is for your feedback and your partnership. This is a team effort. We can't do it without you. You're a part of this team, and we want to hear from you. I encourage all of you to go to visit newyorkcity.gov and click on the Office of the Mayor to sign up and stay in touch with us. We will use these emails to let you know what we're going to be discussing, but as important, we're going to use these emails for feedback for you to tell us what you'd like to hear from us. Anyone who has previously signed up to receive these emails received a link from the mayor yesterday where they could submit questions for the team here, and we will be answering some of those questions here today. Now let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, I'm joined here today by the Department of Environmental Protection. We have Deputy Commissioner of Police John Cosgrove and Deputy Commissioner Beth DeFalco, who are here to talk to you about our Environmental Protection Police, what they do, how they protect our communities, and some exciting new initiatives that they have around noise pollution. And lastly, we'll be joined by Department of Sanitation Commissioner Jesse Tisch, and we have the Chief of Enforcement, Ed Thompson, here, and they're going to discuss what they're doing to keep our city clean and to target any bad actors who think they can just dump their trash in someone else's backyard through these illegal dumping schemes. But first of all, we're going to hear from Mike LaPetrie. Mike LaPetrie, Chief LaPetrie, is the chief of the Office of the Crime Control Strategy of the NYPD, and he's going to provide a look at the overall crime in New York City. Mike?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good afternoon. Like the Deputy Mayor said, overall 7 major index crimes for February was down over 500 index crime victims, with reductions in 5 of the 7 index crimes. Also, transit and housing also saw a decline in February. We saw small increases in felony assaults and grand larcenies of auto in February. The felony assaults were driven by assaults on police officers while conducting enforcement. I think it's important to note the enforcement that is going on in New York City. 7 major arrests for February at a 23-year high. 7 major arrests for the year at a 24-year high. Quality of life enforcement is up over 300% in New York City. And the enforcement that we're focused on is the calls that we're receiving from the community, mostly consumption of alcohol, disorderly groups, and public urination. Leading the decrease in overall crime was the borough of Brooklyn, over 11%, Manhattan, and the Bronx. Shoplifting complaints, the first time in a long time, were decreased in February with over 500 less complaints from February of last year. A lot of resources through the NYPD, working with our partners and the mayor's office to suppress shoplifting. The 2023 reduction in shooting violence continued through the month of February. Shootings in February, citywide, were down 15%, 11 less incidents. Shootings for the year continued to go down at about a 21% ratio or 37 incidents. Shootings in the borough of Bronx continue to be driven down by the precision policing model, down 37% in February and down 39% for the year. The deputy mayor talked about what are we doing, resources that we are pouring into some of these neighborhoods that continue to see gun violence at levels that are unacceptable. The 4-0, 4-7, and the 7-3 all took 0 shootings in February. Those are commands that historically have been in the top 5 for shooting violence in New York City.
Mike, where's the 4-0, 4-7, and 7-3 for context?
Sure. So the 4-0 and the 4-7 are in the borough of Bronx, North and South Bronx. The 7-3 is in Northeast Brooklyn and the Brownsville, East New York area. To go even further, the 4-0 precinct has only taken 1 shooting this year. The 7-7 precinct in Crown Heights, the 7-9, and the 8-1 precincts in Bedford-Stuyvesant have combined for only 3 shootings this year. Those 3 commands, historically, are in the top 15 for shooting violence in New York City. The 3-4 precinct, 1 shooting this year. In December, 5 shootings. We put a lot of resources into Washington Heights Inwood to suppress that violence. And finally, looking at gun violence, combining shootings, shots fired, and gunpoint robberies, we've seen a decrease in over 20% in those incidents this year compared to last year. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Hey, before we go to questions, I just want can you just elaborate? You made a comment about shoplifting. Can you just, and the reason, Mike, I want to talk about it is because we're going to be releasing any day now the retail theft report that the mayor directed a lot of people to take part. So it just wasn't people within the administration. It was part of his plan to include everybody. You were a big, big part of that. So we're going to really be looking to implement that, the district attorneys, a host of elected officials. But I just would like for you to repeat what you said about the shoplifting and put that in context.
I've been doing this for a while, and obviously, after the pandemic, we saw a sharp increase in shoplifting. This is the first time that I can remember that we've seen a decrease in shoplifting in February. And it is absolutely a collaborated effort. It is the community, it is our business partners, it is our bids, the local elected officials, the mayor's office, our partners across the city to suppress shoplifting. And I want to mention the prosecutors. We have weekly calls with the prosecutors across this city, mainly in Manhattan and the Bronx, which drive our shoplifting complaints. And we're talking about a very small percentage of individuals that make up approximately 30% of our shoplifting complaints throughout the city. And that's who we're looking for, and that's who we're targeting with the prosecutors. We're not here to arrest somebody for one shoplift, something like that. These are people that continue. These are prolific shoplifters, and again, working with all our partners, we will continue to suppress the plague.
Hey, so thanks, Chief, because I just wanted to be very clear to the public that we speak to. It is so easy to stand up here and just to shout out numbers and to say we're down, and that's not the environment that we want to create. We know there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We know that we cannot do it without you. So we will be standing up here and we'll be talking about the direction of public safety is going. And so though you will hear numbers, but more importantly, we just want you to see the efforts that's taking place, and with your contributions, we can actually make this city safe. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. We will now take a few questions from the media for Chief LaPetrie related to today's announcement. For those who would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function at this time. We will now start with Jeffrey Mays from the New York Times.
Chief, good afternoon. I actually had a question for the deputy mayor, but if Chief LaPetrie can talk about how those statistics are playing out elsewhere in the city in terms of shoplifting. Are there specific areas, specific neighborhoods? And if you can give any examples of specifically what the NYPD is doing to address those numbers, or any specific tactics or initiatives that are happening right now.
Sure. So we've seen a decrease all across the city in shoplifting, again, mainly in the Bronx and Manhattan. But it's a multi-pronged approach. You know, we've moved our field training offices to business districts across the city. You know, and that's unprecedented. You know, yes, we've moved them to our high violent commands, but we've also moved them to areas in and around in Manhattan. You know, the First Precinct, Midtown South, Midtown North, where we've seen sharp increases. We moved them across areas in Brooklyn and the Bronx, where there's shopping district. So that's the patrol response. We've also have a sharp investigative response where it's more focused, where there's one uniformed chief that oversees both the robbery side of the shoplifting, but also the grand larceny side of shoplifting. And we thought that was important because, you know, we did see somebody going in and maybe taking property where it became force, and then a day or two later, they did the same thing, but they didn't use force. So we're focused, really. We put a lot of investigative resources into shoplifting. We're also looking at the organized theft. Where is it going? You know, who's selling it? Where's the market from it? So we're using our intelligence bureau. So I just said, you know, it's a multi-pronged approach. So it's the Patrol Service Bureau, it's the Intelligence Bureau, it's the Detective Bureau, and we're leveraging all our resources, our intelligence, analyzing our intelligence and moving it over to the operational side. And again, we could not do that without the help of the community, without the help of small business owners, large business, and also the mayor's office and the other city agencies.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Craig McCarthy from the New York Post. Craig, your line is now unmuted. Craig, your line is now unmuted. All right, we'll take the next question from Katie Honan from The City. Katie, your line is now unmuted.
Hi, my question is for Deputy Mayor Phil Banks. I know this was asked last week, but given that there are agencies on the table, you know, it's kind of crossing multiple deputy mayors. If you could explain a little bit how frequently you'll have these, I know you called it episodes last week, and will other deputy mayors take turns in hosting these to speak about the crime and overall quality of life in New York City?
I don't know. This thing is going to evolve. And I think the mayor just wants to get the message out from the administration. Exactly what we're doing here. We're starting with public safety. It's because it's one of his priorities. So I can't say that you won't see other deputy mayors here. In fact, if it relates to what we're trying to accomplish here, but this is going to evolve. And if the need be, I can certainly see why we won't have that. The Our mission here is to get the information out to New Yorkers so they can hear from us and we can, more importantly, hear from them. So it's a suggestion that we'll take into consideration. Okay, so next we're going to hear from DEP. So we have two reps from DEP, John Cosgrove, who I know for a long time, I had a work relationship with, and Commissioner Beth DeFalco. So John, will you start us off and tell us about the DEP police?
I will. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Banks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Cosgrove, and I am the Deputy Commissioner of Police and Security for the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. For generations, all New Yorkers have counted on clean, safe drinking water coming out of their faucets in the morning. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection is the city agency that provides that service 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We consider our water supply system the most critical piece of infrastructure in the city of New York. New York City's water supply comes from 19 reservoirs and 3 controlled lakes. Our aqueducts carry about 1 billion gallons of water a day into the city. It's likely that the New York City DEP is the first city agency you interact with each morning and the last city agency that you interact with each night. There are 2 police departments in the city of New York, the NYPD, of course, and the DEP Police Department. We are not as large as the NYPD, but we are on equal footing, empowered with the same enforcement capacity as the NYPD under the New York City and New York State laws. Since 1907, our core mission is the security and protection of all drinking water, wastewater assets for the city of New York to help ensure that the city's water remains clean and safe to drink. The New York City DEP Police Department has 220 officers and 15 civilians across the city of New York and 9 additional counties. We patrol and protect 2,000 square miles of infrastructure assets and watershed. In addition to police officers, we have an aviation unit, marine units. We use drones and canine officers to help protect the watershed. In addition to reservoirs and aqueducts, we also protect 26 dams and 300 miles of tunnels underneath the city of New York, as well as 14 wastewater treatment facilities within the city of New York. Sir?
Commissioner?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to talk a little bit about noise cameras. Keeping New York safe also means protecting our quality of life. And managing noise pollution is a core part of DEP's mission. We get 45,000 311 complaints a year. It's the most of any category that we get. And many of those issues are the result of illegally modified mufflers. So starting in June 2021, we started a noise camera program. It's a cost-effective way of us and a very innovative way of us trying to mitigate that noise. So how does it work? We pair a camera with sound meters, and they're able to pick up any noise that's detected above 85 decibels, 50 feet away from the camera. And then they are able to zoom in and get the license plate of the camera, of the vehicle rather, and then we're able to issue a summons. We go through the video, and actually we have an example here to show you what it looks like, if we want to cue that up. The red dot you'll see in the video is actually following the car making the noise. Okay. So that registered above 85 decibels. Just for some context, 85 decibels is about as loud as a lawnmower, which is pretty loud if you're trying to sleep. We set up a fine schedule, and the fine is, and it's quite steep. It's $800 for the first offense, $1,700 for the second offense, and $2,500 for every offense after that. So there is a real motivating factor to not get a summons in this particular case. I think of them like speed cameras, but for noise. And so far, we've had one camera that we've been piloting all around the city. It's been tremendously effective in the number of potential complaints that we've seen. I think that's most of it.
So when is the plan? What's the plan to have the second camera and the third camera out? Do we have a projection of when we can expect to see more cameras that's out there?
Yeah, we sure do. These have been tremendously popular. Many council members have been asking for them in their districts. We plan to have an additional 7 cameras by the end of the year, and then the overall plan is to have as many as 100 by 2028.
And it's interesting, when I first took over in this job, I went around and I meet with a lot of elected officials, and one of the council members in Manhattan actually brought this up to me and said that it was his office who was the one who had pushed this legislation. So this is, once again, if the information is correct, it was actually spawned by a city council member. But just really important to the public out there, the objective here is not to write summonses, it's to correct behavior, right? So it's just a tool of writing summonses. They are steep, and it should, I mean, I would imagine that most people would want to avoid those summonses. But part of it is education and getting the word out there, because it is very, it's not good for the environment to have the cars who are riding by with some of these noise. So good work, Commissioner. Any questions?
Thank you, Deputy Commissioners. We will now take a few questions from the media for our Deputy Commissioners that are here today from the Department of Environmental Protection. Craig, if you have a question for the Department of Environmental Protection, your line is now unmuted.
Hey, sorry about that technical difficulties before. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh, sorry. But so for Chief LaPetri, could you just break down the retail theft figures for last month versus last year, as well as arrests for retail theft?
Sure. So for February, we saw 4,276 shoplifting complaints. Again, that's robberies, grand larcenies, and petty larcenies combined. And for February of 2022, we saw 4,757. So again, a decrease of 10%. We were down 19% for the robbery classification, 11% for the grand larceny classification, and 10% for the petty larceny classification.
Thank you, Chief. We'll now take a question from Joe Anuda. Joe, if you have a question for the Department of Environmental Protection, your line is unmuted.
Hi, thanks. I had a question for the Deputy Mayor. I was wondering, many New Yorkers might not immediately think of the Sanitation Department or DEP as part of the public safety agenda. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about why the city is thinking this way. And just to echo Katie's question, a lot of these agencies report to places all over the administration. So I'm wondering, have you been working more closely with them, like maybe through the Office of Municipal Services Assessment? And, if so, what that looks like, and sort of, what you're doing with the office?
I think that the New Yorkers don't get concerned with who reports to who and who works with who. They want to see a finished product. They want to see if they're getting their bang for their buck. So I look at it, I think we look at it as a team effort. How do we work together? And how do we actually get the final product? Now, I guess there may be some out there who's worried about, oh, you report to this person, or you work with that particular individual. Everybody here works for the mayor. He was elected by the citizens, and what we're just trying to do is turn out the best product that we possibly can. So if we look about it as, we look together as working together as a team, and a team effort to see whether we can turn out the better product. So that's what we're looking to do, and that's our objective. Now, we're going to talk about one of my favorite commissioners who I've actually have a great working relationship with as a team member. Though she doesn't report to me, we have a great relationship and a long-standing relationship, and it is something that's very important to just overall public safety. So I'm going to turn it over to the Department of Sanitation Commissioner, Jess Tisch, and she's accompanied by her Chief of Enforcement, Chief Ed Thompson. Jess?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Banks. Cleanliness and safety go hand in hand, and keeping New York City clean and safe is a shared responsibility. The 10,000 members of the Department of Sanitation have been working around the clock to implement the cleanliness agenda laid out by Mayor Adams, and we are seeing results. The largest year-over-year decrease in overflowing litter basket complaints ever, miscollection complaints driven so low as to essentially be a rounding error, and more than 1,500 no man's lands, areas like overpasses and medians, as well as highway on and off ramps that are cleaned now regularly. We are doing our part. But every New Yorker has a role to play in maintaining the cleanliness of our neighborhoods. In a city this size, it can't just be the 10,000 members of the sanitation department doing this important work. And we have laws regarding public responsibility around cleanliness. We know that most New Yorkers do their part. But prior to this administration, there was a lack of strategic, meaningful enforcement against those who don't. And New Yorkers noticed. It hurt our communities. It hurt our reputation on the global stage, and it hurt our recovery. We have a new focus on enforcing the basic cleanliness rules: cleaning the sidewalk in front of a chain store, putting trash out when you're supposed to and in an orderly manner, the kinds of things that keep our streets clean. For things like filthy sidewalks, loose trash, uncovered receptacles that attract rats, the sorts of basic cleanliness requirements that make for good neighbors and good neighborhoods, we are looking at an 80% increase in summons issuance year to date as compared to the same time period in 2022, the city that Mayor Adams and his administration came into. On one of the most crucial regulations, the requirement that property owners clean 18 inches into the street, we've written over 12,000 summonses so far this year. That's 12,000 times that we've told someone or some business, hey, you gotta do your part to keep this neighborhood clean. Now, I wanna be clear, these are not gotcha violations, and we will never enforce just for the sake of enforcement. We will only enforce for the sake of changing behavior. As part of the Mayor's Small Business Forward initiative, we are working with the City Council to reduce unnecessary fines where we can. But the things that we are talking about today are the things that all New Yorkers expect every person and every business around them to do. It's not someone else's job to keep your property and the area around it clean. I'd also like to provide an update on our illegal dumping enforcement, one of this administration's most successful operations at the intersection of safety and cleanliness, where for far too long, the only strategy was just to come and clean it up and let it happen all over again. Illegal dumping is a theft of public space, where someone, usually a crooked contractor or an out-of-towner, comes into our city, our neighborhoods, to what they think is a place that no one will care about, a place they can just leave their trash on our streets. This doesn't affect every neighborhood, but the ones that it does affect feel it profoundly, and that should matter to every New Yorkers. Now, dumpers are wrong about two things. They're wrong to think that no one cares about Hunts Point or East New York or Glendale or any of the other areas where this has been a profound problem for far too long. And they're also wrong to think that they'll get away with it, because for the first time in New York City, they won't. That's because of our new citywide illegal dumping enforcement camera network that will grow each week to more than 250 cameras this summer. And it's because of the work of our dedicated sanitation police officers who use the camera network in their investigations to catch dumpers and hold them accountable. Based on this new strategy, both vehicle impounds and the $4,000 summonses for illegal dumping are up 450% year to date versus the same period in 2022. And there's a lot more to come. In just the last 3 months, we've moved out of pilot phase and added more dumping enforcement cameras in Council Districts 14, 15, and 17 in the Bronx, District 30 in Queens, and District 40 in Brooklyn, with hundreds more on the way soon. We're not just doubling down on this strategy, we are quadrupling down on it. And our message to dumpers is clear. Your days of dumping on our neighborhoods are long past over. And our message to New Yorkers is even clearer. These crooks thought no one gave a damn about your neighborhood, but they were wrong. Mayor Adams gives a damn, Deputy Mayor Banks gives a damn, and so do I and the entire Department of Sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We will now take a few questions from the media for the Department of Sanitation related to today's announcement. Mike Garland from the Daily News, your line is now unmuted.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thanks. Commissioner Tisch, on these summonses, how much money has this brought into the city so far, all these new summonses you just mentioned?
You know, Mike, you've been at this long enough to know that we don't really have easy access to the dollars and cents of it. Each summons is adjudicated, and it takes time for that process to happen. So that's a question that I cannot, unfortunately, answer right now.
All right. I don't see any other members of the media who have re-raised their hands. So thank you all. We'll now move on to the next portion where earlier this week, the administration reached out to New Yorkers asking them to submit questions for the officials that have joined us here today. We will now get to as many of those questions as we can with the time that we have left. Our first question comes from Irene from the Bronx. This one is for Chief LaPetrie. Though there is a hotline for fake paper license plates on cars, what else are you going to do about eliminating this practice? Too many cars are on the road and taking up parking spaces without car insurance.
Thank you. So yes, it's been a problem, and especially after or during the pandemic when DMVs were shut down for quite a while. But I will tell you this, we are focused on the enforcement aspect of fake paper plates or license plate covers. Our enforcement this year is as follows. We've made over 400 arrests. We've summoned vehicles over 600 times, or we've given over 600 summonses, and we've also seized almost 400 vehicles. And again, this is a collaborated effort, not just through our patrol offices, but this is also being used with our investigative offices, where if we see something that a car was being used in another crime that had a paper plate or a license cover, we do a lot of work to identify who that person was, who the real registered owner is, and we've seen increases in enforcement with that also. Thank you.
And I just want to add to that, because I think it's a great question, and it's something that is plaguing our streets, that the Sheriff Anthony Miranda, he conducts operations as well. So he is very much involved in this particular battle there as well. So I just want to thank that caller, because that is something that we do get a lot of complaints on, and we're really trying to increase our efforts to tackle that problem.
Our next question comes from Deletta from the Bronx. This is for the Department of Sanitation. She asks, why are drivers not moving their cars on alternate side parking days? Are they getting tickets? I see this every day in my neighborhood. I live in the 46th precinct.
So I can't really answer to the why, but I can speak about our enforcement against drivers who don't move their cars on alternate side parking days. In my remarks, I said that enforcement of the basic sanitation rules has generally been way up this year. And that is also the case with our enforcement against vehicles that don't move for alternate side parking. So far this year, the Department of Sanitation has written 76,000 violations for cars that don't move for alternate side parking. And I want to be clear that the NYPD also writes summonses for that violation as well. Our summonses tend to be 1/3 of the total, so ours being up so dramatically shows that the total number will go up. But I want to be clear that 76,000 is not the total number. There's also the NYPD number on top of it. And I would say also note that the 76,000 is double what it was at this time last year.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Buster in Manhattan. Buster, this is for the Department of Environmental Protection. He asks, what are some steps I can take to protect my children during the summer months when there is an air pollution alert?
It's a really good question. And you've already taken the first step by monitoring the air quality alerts. You can do that, and you can sign up for them so you can get alerts directly from Notify NYC. You know, on those really poor quality, air quality days, it's probably best to limit the time outside when the air quality is poor. Plan your activities for days then when the pollution levels are low. And of course, you can help us reduce air pollution. Don't sit in your car and leave it idling, or even better yet, choose a cleaner commute like the subway or a bus.
Thank you. Next question comes for Chief LaPetrie from Jacqueline from Brooklyn. How long will you be able to keep a police presence in our subways? It's taken some getting used to hearing that there are officers on the platform, but I think it makes a difference.
Police officers are always going to be in the subways, that's for sure. So, you know, we've put so many resources into the transit system for obvious reasons. You know, it's so important. The mayor has said it so many times. The police commissioner has said it so many times that people need to feel safe, as the deputy mayor also said, especially to get the city back, you know, where it needs to be. I'll just say this: transit crimes down 8 straight weeks for the city, down 18% for the year. But more importantly, just like I spoke before about the quality of life enforcement, and again, this is about precision. You know, I talked about the increase in quality of life, but it's the calls that we're getting that we're enforcing the most, the disorderly calls. And we also are seeing that in transit. We're seeing sharp increases in enforcement, but the right enforcement, you know, the disorderly calls, things of that nature. So we are laser focused in regards to transit safety, as we are for the city, and we will continue to put extra offices, resources into the transit system.
And Mike, just very briefly speak on this here, because in addition to the officers that's assigned to the Transit Bureau, are we sending officers assigned to patrol precincts to go down there? And can you just explain real briefly what we're doing too?
Yep, so as the deputy mayor just alluded to, officers that are usually assigned to precincts have been going into transit, sometimes for a period of time, for 30 minutes, for an hour, to do what we would call a directed patrol. But we've also have moved officers where normally their tour might be in a precinct, for have that whole tour in transit. And again, we're working with all our partners, you know, our other agencies, the state police and whoever, you know, in and around Penn Station, in and around Port Authority. So we have a multi-pronged approach, obviously with the MTA, to suppress, you know, the crime in transit.
And as the CEO of the MTA, Jan Oliva, who I speak to often, he gives me an update each week on their, you know, their customer survey satisfaction, is that they're actually seeing a difference and they're seeing the visibility and they like it. So it's a good thing. We're moving in the right direction.
JP from Queens asks, are sanitation pickup schedules also being reevaluated to more closely coincide with the upcoming changes in set-out times for household garbage?
And we've already changed many of them. It used to be the case that New Yorkers set out their trash at 4 p.m. and then the sanitation department would come and collect it the next morning at 6 a.m. That meant that trash, 24 million pounds of it every day, sat on our curbs for 14 hours a day. It was on the curbs for more hours of the day than it wasn't. On April 1st, we are changing the set-out times for trash in New York City. They're going from 4 p.m. to 8 no black bags on the curb before 8 p.m. If New Yorkers want to set it out before 8 p.m., they can do so at 6 p.m. in a container. But I mentioned that we've also changed our schedule, and we are doing much more collection now on our midnight shift rather than on our 6 a.m. shift. Today, we're doing approximately 25% of all of our collection at midnight versus 6 a.m. And the whole idea there is we want to dramatically shrink the amount of time that trash spends on the streets of New York City.
And Jet from Manhattan asks, my neighbor is playing ridiculously loud music at 4 a.m. Who can I report this to?
I'll go ahead and take that one because often we get those complaints as well through 311. First of all, call 311. And I certainly relate to this. I'm sure most New Yorkers have probably had this experience. And also maybe call your landlord. But we work very closely with NYPD to address noise complaints, whether it's your neighbor or a local business that's playing music around the corner that's entirely too loud. In those instances, we will partner with NYPD to go out to those businesses and use sound meters. And they can also face steep fines if they're found to have gone past the curfew for sound. So.
And I'd just like to just piggyback on that one there as well. That we're doing a deep dive into 311. We are conducting many callbacks to people who have called 311 to kind of get their satisfaction with not only the quality but the response. And we're actually breaking it down, and the mayor's seeing which agencies are doing well in what areas and what agencies need improvement in those areas. And those agency heads are hearing and will continue to hear directly from him, because those are the areas, the fabrics that kind of could break New York. 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody's playing music, I have to get up to go to work, or my child has to get the proper sleep and go to school, and all of a sudden now it continues until 7 o'clock, and it just kind of broke that whole evening. And those are the areas that we're looking back, we're calling back the 311 callers. How long did it take to come? How did you feel about that particular response? We're actually breaking it down. So we're making a lot of progress in that area, and we want to just make sure that we make some progress in those particular areas, because it is very important, and we certainly hear you.
Fred from Manhattan asks, what can we do as citizens to help fight crime?
So the NYPD has always said that public safety is a shared responsibility. You know, nobody knows a neighborhood better than somebody who lives, works, goes to school, shops in that neighborhood. Obviously, calling 311, 911 is helpful, but also engaging and having conversations with the officers that patrol in and around, again, where you live, where you work, or where you go to school. That's very important. You know, that is engaging, and our officers absolutely should be and will and do engage with the community.
And I just want to add, because, see, that's a very important question. So there's a couple of answers to that. The first thing is that if you hear or see anything, right, if it's an emergency, call 911. If it's not, call 311. I mean, the purpose is I want as many people to call 311, because I look at it as a way for the mayor to understand what you're seeing out there. But two, every precinct has a community council meeting. Every precinct has a community council meeting, right? Where monthly you can sit there and you can actually have a meeting and a discussion with that precinct's commanding officer. And you can kind of get an understanding of exactly what's going on in your area. And that's the format that we utilize for you to be able to help us help you, and vice versa. So I would caution everyone to do that. And then also bring your concerns to your local council members, right? Because they are your representatives. We speak to them all of the time. They serve as a check and balance. And that's how government is going to work. So I strongly implore you to visit those areas.
Thank you. On behalf of the Adams administration, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in to today's briefing. We look forward to seeing you all at our next one. Have a great day.